Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
And we welcome you to this edition of the Black and Gold Banneret podcast. I'm Eric Lopez. I'm not joined by Jeff Sharon. He's actually got a family matter, good family matters. He's going to be a dad for a second time. So congrats to him and his wife on that. They got a beautiful baby arriving. But as a result, he beat Scott Frost, by the way, because Scott Frost is actually due to be a dad as well real soon. So Jeff decided to beat him out, I guess. You know, you go in up tempo. But have no fear. We got a great program ahead for you. I'm joined by a UCF alum, Victor Anderson, who was a longtime UCF broadcaster, actually was the original voice of UCF softball.
Wait. This ain't In the Circle?
In the Circle, a very successful softball podcast that him and I co-host on a weekly basis. We encourage you to definitely subscribe to that, especially all you softball fans. But many UCF fans, softball fans know Vic. Obviously, he's a longtime softball voice when they were in the A-Sun with Matt Dunaway before some other guy took over. So he will be filling in as our producer and co-host for today's episode. We'll be joined by Brian Murphy, our very own, to talk about UCF football going to play Navy. And Scott Frost and his future keeps coming up. And, hey, give us money to keep him. We'll discuss that as much more. So, of course, you can check us out on Twitter on Black and Gold Banneret. As well as on Eric Lopez. Well, where can they find your fine work?
They can find me at Catbird Red if you want to follow me on Twitter if you have nothing else to do with your time between UCF football games or anything related to to UCF athletics in general. But it's an interesting week to be on here. UCF going to Annapolis to take on Navy Saturday afternoon, 3:30.
In Annapolis, yes. The Knights coming off that big dominant win over East Carolina. Now take on the Midshipping Navy coming off the loss to Memphis. We'll break that game down. We'll talk about UCF women's soccer back home. And I wrote on Black and Gold Banneret that they, not football, is the top team on campus. We'll talk about that and much more. Let's bring in our other co-host of this program. He filled in for me a couple of weeks ago. I appreciated him doing that. And that's our very own Brian Murphy. All right, Murph, glad you're back with us. I know you filled in for me a couple weeks ago. You're filling in this week for Jeff. And as I mentioned at the Open, Jeff decided to just beat Scott Frost to, getting that baby out and becoming a dad. He'll become a dad for a second time. I know Scott Frost, he's due to be a dad here real shortly, and I guess Jeff decided to beat him out, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the only competition that Jeff Sharon could beat Scott Frost in, but it's not a bad one, and it sounds like everybody's doing well, and that's the best.
That's the best exciting news to him, so we're excited for him on that. All right, Murph, let's get into the football team. I don't even want to discuss the East Carolina game. You know, sometimes, first of all, East Carolina is an abysmal team right now. They're as I mentioned, I think on social media and on the blog on Saturday night when I was at the game, they remind me a lot of what UCF was 2 years ago when they were winless. So I don't really the only thing I do want to bring up that I think goes into the Navy game, UCF did get gashed a little bit by East Carolina in the running game. And East Carolina's not that good of a running game. And I know, look, they got gashed a little bit against Cincinnati. And again, they were up big, and you could say that, look, they had the score kind of dictated some things, and they were playing against the pass. But as we look forward to this game at Navy, how confident are you at this front seven stopping Navy's run? Because, look, it's not, that's what Navy's going to do. They're going to run with the triple option. They're going to run with the quarterback. They're going to run with the running game. It's going to come down to, can that front seven and defensive line hold up against Navy?
Yeah, and I think there's a couple things that weigh in UCF's favor here. One, they have been seeing the triple option, at least in practice, since the spring. because they were preparing for Georgia Tech early in the year, who runs the same offense. Paul Johnson comes from Navy. And so they were preparing for that game months ago, and even they knew they had 2 triple option offenses on their schedule. So they've been sort of preparing for this for months. But still, there's a difference between preparing for it in practice and trying to stop Scott Frost as your scout team quarterback, which is a true story, because Scott Frost is running triple option in practice against his own defense right now, and actually going out there and stopping the team that does it, and the team that's been doing it forever. They say all the good things, all the cliches about you got to trust your teammates, you got to be disciplined and have good gap integrity, you can't overrun plays. But I would say that I am a little nervous to see how this works. I am worried about how UCF can get over those cut blocks that Navy does, and I don't take too much stock in how the run defense wasn't complete shutdown great against Cincinnati and ECU because of what you said. They were really big leads, and I think the defense was kind of just playing back. But against Navy, having to see that 65 times a game and having your defense on the field for 40 minutes a game, because that's what Navy does, I am a little wary to see how this defense holds up.
Well, and a lot of that is their offense could really help them out. If UCF's offense continues to click like they've been clicking, well, the defense, that might help them out. But if UCF gets some 3 and outs, if they turn the ball over, because Navy in the past, what makes Navy unique is their defense is not like this, juggernaut of a defense. What they are, they're opportunistic. They depend on making plays, forcing teams into field goals, forcing turnovers. That's how they beat Houston, for example, last year when they had upset Houston in a very similar situation. So that's a couple of keys, is UCF protecting the football and not putting your defense in a spot where they're constantly, clearly you're right. Navy's going to want to have this game, control the time of possession, but more importantly, control the number of plays. I think Navy would like to be 60, 70 plays, 80 plays, keep UCF's offense to about 40 to 50, if possible, to have a shot here and wear down UCF's defense, kind of like what we saw at times last season with this defense against the Temple game, for example. When Temple came back in the second half, the defense wore out at times in the second half, and they lost some close games because of it.
And you look at Navy, they've got the second fewest takeaways of any team in the AC. Meanwhile, UCF ranks second in the conference, I think top 5 in the nation in turnover margin. The turnover is going to be huge because while you don't want to give UCF extra possession because they're probably going to score, UCF needs to take advantage of every possession they have and value it and treasure it because they don't know how many times they're going to get the ball, like you said. So I think, again, turnovers is a huge deal. Another thing that's a huge deal that is worth watching, we talk a lot about third down defense. You got to make third down stops, which UCF has been very good at this year. They have slipped in that area a couple of times in the last 2 weeks, but generally very good at third down defense. But more so than that, trying to limit Navy to 2nd and 7 or longer, and trying to really keep them to short gains on first down and second down, so that they can't get into 3rd and 3 or 3rd and 4. Because when you put Navy in 3rd and 3 or 3rd and 4, odds are they're probably going to pick it up. You really need to stop them on the early downs, on 1st and 2nd downs. That's going to have more of an impact on how this game goes than actually the third down defensive stop.
And kind of to your point, Murph, where you talk about how UCF has to value every possession because of that very ball control, triple option offense for Navy. Do you see UCF maybe trying to slow down the offense just a little bit at times to try to help out their defense, especially after Navy goes on a 15, 16-play drive that chews up 9 minutes of the clock?
Absolutely, because not only are you keeping UCF's offense on the field, you're keeping that defense on the field, and they want that defense to be tired. I mean, they want to wear that defense down. I think it was the quote of the week came from Jemias Pittman. I asked him, I said, are you ready for a rough and tumble game against Navy and all the cut blocks they do and this game's going to be one in the trenches. Are you ready for that sort of game? And he said, I don't expect to come out walking the same if that's what you're asking. I mean, he knows, I think they all know that this is going to be a rough game and that Navy's going to do everything they can to keep that defense on the field. Conditioning's going to be a big deal. But like you said, it accomplishes two things. You keep the offense off the field, you keep that high-scoring offense off the field, the best offense in the nation, arguably, and you wear down that defense, and then if that happens, Navy's got this game where they want it.
I said this on social media, and some people didn't like it, but I do think one thing that concerns me with you're blowing these teams out, but I don't care who you are. In college football, every team always has a couple of games where they face adversity situation.
Yeah.
And this team hasn't, quite honestly. I mean, they have been dominant. If you want to say that the Maryland game, I was there. That was not an adverse situation. Heck, there was nobody in the stands that were Maryland fans. This will be a very difficult home, probably their first real adverse road game. I don't think Cincinnati was an adverse crowd game. Navy will be. I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world if this team got punched in the mouth and see how they react. And that's what I'm curious about. What happens when this team gets punched in the mouth? Because we haven't seen that yet. And to be honest with you, Murph, I don't want to wait till Black Friday to find that out. So maybe this would not be a bad game to find that out. Not suggesting that they are going to lose if they don't get, but I do want to know how this team reacts if they face some adverse situation.
I think you're right, and I think, and not that this matters to everybody, I thought it was interesting, at least I thought it was interesting, that UCF opened up as a 6.5-point favorite in this game, and is now up to a 7.5-point favorite in this game. If I had to bet, I would sort of probably put my money on Navy. I think this is going to be a really, really tough game. I think I think you're right. I think UCF needs a game. Not that they need a game, but they're going to have a game this year. They're not going to roll. They're not going to just rampage over everybody. They're going to have a game this year. Either it's now, or maybe in a couple weeks against SMU in Dallas, or that Black Friday game against the Bulls. But they're going to have a game where they need to bow up in the fourth quarter, up or down by 3 or 7 points, and we don't know how that looks. I think it could happen this weekend. I really do. I'm really interested to see how this team performs under such circumstances. It's Navy's homecoming. Just the energy in that stadium is going to be pretty electric. And I would be surprised if UCF won this game by double digits. I'll just say that flat out.
Wow. And look, I mean, as much as criticism, and rightfully so, and people have criticized the USF football schedule, the one thing I will say, they have faced adversity already this season. The opener against San Jose State, they were down, what, was 17-0?
17-0. They were struggling against Stony Brook all the way through the fourth quarter.
In the second half, and people, and they struggled. I do think that could help a football team down the road to be tested like that. Again, I'm not, look, if UCF blows out Navy, I'm not saying that, get the pedal, but I am concerned moving forward. At some point, it could be this weekend, like you said. I think Navy's a prime candidate for that because Navy if they're executing, they will limit possessions and put pressure on the offense to be efficient. And that's what makes Navy so difficult, just like Georgia Tech, because they shorten the game. That's how they like to do that. It might be at SMU. It could come at Temple. We know it's going to come at Black Friday. It's going to come at Black Friday, and I think it would be good for this team if they get challenged a little bit and see how they react so they get them prepared for that monster game that's looming on Black Friday. Because here's the reality of this. As big of a game as this is with Navy, if UCF loses to Navy, it's not the end of the world because they could still win out and win the conference championship and still get the all-access bowl, in my opinion. So, because the way the league is set up with currently 3 teams in the top 25, Navy was just in the top 25, and they're a very, very well-respected program and very respected team. So that's going to be, to me, one of the things I will look for today to see how that run defense reacts and what happens if this team is trailing and they need to convert a big third down. It's going to come, and you believe it'll come with Navy. Navy's weird to me because
How so?
I've watched them a lot this year. They're on Showtime every week. They have a 30-minute show. This is not as good of a Navy team as they've had in the past with Reynolds at quarterback.
Right.
But they're well coached, and you mentioned it, Murph. They're at home. It's their homecoming. This is not about talent. This is about execution and technique and discipline. And it's good. I'm very interested to see how this team reacts. So you think that UCF will be challenged? Do you think it's a high-scoring game? Do you think it's a 34-30 game? What do you expect to see on Saturday?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like it's high-scoring still because it'll be in the 30s, but for UCF, that's not really high-scoring anymore. Right. Like that's actually well below their average. So yeah, I think it'll be like in the 30s. I don't think you'll see either team hit 40. Although you've seen that in some Navy games this year when they played Air Force, it was 48-45. But I think you'll see both teams below 40, which for UCF would be a downgrade. And just one endpoint that you can point to and you can take in stock or not in it. But in Navy's last 5 games, we've had margins in Navy's last 5 games of 2, 10, 10, 3, and 3. Again, I just don't see this UCF team being able to blow out Navy because Navy just doesn't allow you to do that.
Oh, one thing I was watching Navy play last week against Memphis, similar offense that they'll be facing with UCF this week, and I felt that Memphis started to wear the Navy defense down with all the plays that they ran in the second half. Is that going to benefit Navy, knowing that they played a similar offense in Memphis, in helping them prepare for UCF this week?
Maybe a little bit, but I don't think you can really compare Memphis to UCF offensively. I mean, there are things that Memphis does that are dangerous. They've got a mobile quarterback who can throw. We've seen it. We saw it. We were supposed to see it until it turned into a blowout in the second half here in Orlando. But UCF is a different animal. I would say that while Memphis is a decent primer, it's not UCF. I'll write this later this week. I thought for a couple weeks this is the best UCF team ever. I think this is better than the Fiesta Bowl team. I think they're more talented. So we'll see. But I think it'll be close. But I still think they're much better than Memphis. I think this is something that Navy really hasn't seen in total.
Well, if UCF blows out Navy, Scott Frost's stock will continue to rise, and it might be an expensive excellence fund that UCF has just started, opened up this week. For those that don't know, the interesting story that's come out this week is that the school will raise money more than $1.5 million a year from donors for the school's, quote, football excellence fund.
Can we just call it what it is and say, help keep Scott Frost a UCF fund?
That's Victor Anderson, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
Murph, your reaction to that, to this fund that's coming out? I find it's been interesting. I see Tony Dungy tweeting like how Scott Frost is not about the money and that Nebraska blew their chance. And I see a lot of stuff going out there, but yet some mixed feelings. I mean, if it's not about money, why are we doing an excellence fund? It's very interesting to me. But nonetheless, your thoughts on as you heard of this coming out.
I want to know like who was in a room when they thought of that name and how they wanted to cover this up. Like Victor's got it right. It is what it is. But we can't make it sound like that. So it'll be called the Excellence Fund. Oh, that's perfect. It's perfect. This isn't all about Frost either. This is about keeping his assistants too and expanding the pool for his assistants, which is again very, very important. I mean, the defensive players talk about Eric Shenander every week about what he's done for this defense. He's very crucial. There's a lot of assistant coaches who are very crucial to this team right now. So it's not just for Frost, but at least we know what it is, and at least UCF's making an effort to, because they know they need to open up the wallet for Frost and his coaches, and they want to keep this thing going, because they know the Wolves will be out. Well, then they know the Wolves will be out at the end of the year, whether it be Nebraska or Tennessee. Both those teams will certainly be looking for new head coaches, and they know they're coming after their boy, and they need to pay up. I thought it was interesting in which Mike Bianchi of the Orlando Sentinel. The title of his article, or the title of his column about this Excellence Fund, uses the phrase preemptive financial strike. Basically, it's a war. It's going to turn into a war at this point. It's a war over Scott Frost, and that's what we have.
But here's the thing. I mean, they could raise all the money they want at the Excellence Fund. At the end of the day, if a Power 5 school wants a coach, they're gonna get him because they could pay. They could rally. If Tennessee or Nebraska really want him, they'll go higher if they have to. Now, I will say this. You make a great point, and I think this is the thing I've learned about Coach Frost. He's very loyal to that staff, and the staff's loyal to him. And he will, and that's not talk, that what you brought up. He definitely wants his staff to get taken care of. In fact, when he recently just got an extension at UCF, one of the things they highlighted was that the staff got a bump as well. That's a big part of this, and I do agree with you. I don't think this is as much about how much he was going to make. It's about what his staff will make, and that's going to be just as big of a decision because whatever he decides to do, and I think you would agree, Murph, he's really at no pun intended, Vic, the catbird seat.
Yeah, no pun intended.
He can do whatever he wants right now. He's got every option imaginable that he can do. If he wants to go to his alma mater, become a savior, he probably can do that. If he says, you know what, I'd rather go to an SEC school like Tennessee, maybe Auburn if that opens up.
Texas A&M.
A&M or whatever. In the SEC, if I want to go there, I can wait and get that, be in line for that job. Joe Klatt mentioned him for the Tennessee job. If he wants to go West Coast, he could go UCLA, I think is going to open up. Maybe some other Pac-12 jobs could open up there as well, et cetera, et cetera. My point is, options are going to be there. If he wants to stay, he could stay and get a bump in the raise and maybe wait for a future job. He's got a lot of options here. He's at the leverage position, and I don't think there's a decision that he will make, regardless of the decision he makes. I don't think there's a wrong decision. He can't go wrong, can he?
Probably not. I think if you're a really, really biased UCF fan, you could probably make arguments against, like, why would you want to go to Nebraska? They're sort of, like, they're living in the past. Why would you want to go play for the SEC? Why would you want to go coach the SEC for as long as Nick Saban is still coaching the SEC? Why would you want to go to the Big Ten when you've got all those teams stacked up there with Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Michigan State? But the fact is, like, those teams can still pay more, and if that's what matters, then that'll be a big turning point. On the other side of it, though, if Frost decides to stay here, he could sort of become what Chris Peterson was at, like, Boise State, right? And make really, as much as what George O'Leary did for this program could become Scott Frost. It would be his program. It would be his legacy that he put them on the track of being perennially competitive and very, very good. My concern is, and I've said this earlier this week, was if UCF runs the table and goes undefeated, what would then Scott Frost have left to accomplish in a non-Power 5 conference school? And I know, Brandon Hellwig said to me, and he's right, that most college coaches get hired, in December. So if UCF was running the table, Frost couldn't take another job, while he's planning for a bowl game. Well, he could do like Tom Herman. He could do it like Tom Herman at Texas and like bail on his team before the bowl game. But I understand the point that, like, if he's preparing for a bowl game, he now have his sights set on a new coaching job. But the fact is, if they do go undefeated, he really wouldn't have much left to accomplish at a non-power conference school. And that does worry me a little bit.
I do agree with you, and I respectfully disagree with Brandon. Urban Meyer took a Utah team that was undefeated, took the Florida job, but still coached the Fiesta Bowl as an example of that. So in fact, help me out here. Didn't last year, our boy, P.J. Fleck. Didn't he coach the Cotton Bowl?
Now that was different because he was still the Minnesota job was still open
wink.
when he was coaching at Western Michigan in the Cotton Bowl.
Right, sure.
What are you trying to say, Lopez?
Sure, yeah. He had no idea. Yeah, there was no agreement there. No. Just, whatever you say, Vic. Santa Claus.
On a lesser scale, you can talk about Lane Kiffin.
Yeah.
Sort of being courted while he was preparing for the national championship game.
The reason, by the way, I was joking about teasing Vic a little bit there. I'll tell you this story real brief. A couple years ago, when the Michigan job was open, I got it through a source that Jim Harbaugh was going there. That was a done deal. That was during the NFL season. And if you remember, Michigan didn't. There was no, they kept the job open. Everybody's like, what are they doing? And people are like, no, Harbaugh ain't going to leave. He's not going to leave the NFL during the season. Well, of course not. What they did was they had a deal done, but they waited until the 49ers season ended, which was at the end of the regular season, and then magically that week he got named the head coach. So my point is, just because the job is, quote, open,
doesn't mean it's actually open.
And the Minnesota job is an example, and Stasis, people talk behind scenes. And
they have advocates.
So my point is, things could happen. Like, Scott Frost can coach the bowl game if he wants to, if he decides. But I will say this. You asked the question, what is there left for him to accomplish? And I think it's a valid point because you saw what happened with Tom Herman. He took Houston in his first year to the All-Access Bowl, had this magical year, and then what happens is the expectations go up, and it's hard to match. So what happens is, the next year they lose to Navy. Well, what's wrong with the program? Oh, my good. So that you're right. You're in a lose-lose situation if you move long-term. The counter to that, though, is there's no pressure here at UCF. Scott Frost can win 9 games. You can win 9 games a year here and get a statue. We've proven that. Just avoid going winless. More than once, or twice. But my point is, he could wait for that perfect job. I mean, you mentioned Chris Peterson as an interesting example because he turned down a lot of jobs at Boise State until
Washington.
He took the Washington job. So who's to say that?
How about even Greg Marshall in college basketball with Wichita State? I mean, he hasn't left.
Right.
And I think it's really good for not only that program, but for Greg Marshall. He has a legacy. He has developed a legacy at that program. Wichita State is Greg Marshall. Scott Frost, or UCF could be Scott Frost if he stays. We don't know.
Agreed, but here's the big difference. At college basketball, Greg Marshall can get to the Final Four and win a national title. Scott Frost cannot do that right now at UCF in football because of the system the way it is. UCF could go undefeated this year, next year, and they're not going to sniff the playoffs. I'm sorry. That's not going to happen. Right. It's the system the way it is, and that's why I think a lot of coaches leave in college football to go to Power 5 jobs than they do, say, in basketball. And by the way, you mentioned Marshall. Look out, because I think Louisville is going to go after him. And the rumors, to your point, even Greg Marshall, who's been there, the rumors will not stop. Even if Scott Frost stays this year, there's always going to be jobs. And I'm going to give you another job. Let me ask you this scenario, because you were just there a couple weeks ago, and you know how things are going up there. What's to say next Scott Frost decides to stay this year and says, you know what? I like it here in the state of Florida. I can recruit. I like the weather. Oh, hey, there's a job that opens 2 hours away from here in Gainesville a year from now.
Yeah.
Which is what happened, by the way, with Tom Herman. Herman waited for Texas. Now, he was a grad assistant under Mac Brown, but he was able to stay in the state where he was knocking it out of the park recruiting. All he had to do was move from Houston to Austin.
Yeah. That would really stick. That would really stick in our craw, wouldn't it? Oh, my goodness. Scott Frost would turn heel so quickly.
Wow.
Yeah, that's wrestling, another wrestling term.
That's like Seth Rollins turning on the Shield.
But he has that right. Yes, wow, that's very good. Very good, Vic. Very well. Well done, boys. Well done. But look, he has the options to do any of that, and that's the beauty. Right now, it's good to be Scott Frost.
It is.
He's got the leverage, and I support any decision he makes. And I think, I think he's got a lot of great options. Now,
I would also say to UCF fans, I know they want loyalty and they think that their coach should stay with them because he loves them and everything. Scott Frost is going to make the best decision for Scott Frost and his family, and we should be okay with that.
Well, we saw that with the last coach. The last coach went to the Fiesta Bowl, and 2 years later he goes winless. We want him out of here. They wanted him out of there.
Yep.
So it could change in 1 minute. Scott Frost, everybody loves him now, but let's say UCF is losing 2-3 games. I guarantee you people are going to be screaming, oh, why?
They were saying that about Mackenzie Milton with his performance at the Cure Bowl.
Mackenzie Milton, right. We need a new quarterback. This guy's not going to cut it. Well, turns out he's cutting it. So things change.
We have some breaking news. College football fans are slightly irrational.
Wow. More in the next edition of the Black and Gold Veteran Podcast.
That's correct. That's correct. Real quick, we mentioned college basketball, UCF men's basketball. They had their media day and conference. They'll have their local media day next week on all that. It was released today on many social platforms, the new basketball court. Yuri, have you seen the new basketball court?
I have.
And?
Yes. As a writer, I think of really cheap puns that come into my brain right away. If it's an up and down season, it's a roller coaster season. If they go to the NCAA tournament and win a game, you can talk about what a ride this is. It's been like an amusement park ride. I mean, the puns are endless. So yeah, I don't mind the design. I actually like the design better than the sort of Neapolitan black and gold court. I thought that was always ugly. It sort of seems like where we're going now with college basketball. Everybody's got these stencilist designs on courts. And it's fine. I'm fine with it. I'm very cool. It kind of tells you what Orlando's about. We're about roller coasters and amusement parks, I guess. Sure.
Yeah.
Isn't that what WrestleMania was this year?
Yes.
Right. No comment.
It was the ultimate thrill ride.
That's
Don't
right.
That. I don't know if you ever heard that.
Yes. So maybe can UCF basketball be the other ultimate thrill ride?
Well, pump the brakes.
Maybe we'll get into that next week in the future when we get more into basketball talk. Last thing before I let you go. I wrote about this, and I know you saw it, Black and Gold Banneret right now, UCF women's soccer. I called them the best team on campus. As good as the football team is right now, women's soccer to me, is still the best team on campus. Look what they've done. They are destroying teams. They just destroyed LSU 4-0, a team that's going to go to the NCAA tournament out of the SEC. They're crushing people by average scores in their last 6 wins, like 4-0, which in soccer is unheard of. That's almost like winning 60-0 in football every week. They have the 20th hardest schedule in the country. They're 7 ranked in the polls. They're number 5 in the RPI, Murph. The College Cup, which is the women's version of the Final Four in women's soccer, is in our backyard in downtown Orlando at the New Orlando City.
Beautiful downtown Orlando. Get it right.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Vic. And as I mentioned this with Jeff last week on the podcast, if UCF is trying to play themselves not only to win the regular season title in the conference and the tournament, but try to get themselves a 1 seed, which I wrote in the article right now, they could be a 1 seed throughout the NCAA tournament. There's 4 1 seeds that get rewarded, and if they do that, they get to host every NCAA tournament game, which will be a good path where they don't even have to take a flight or a bus ride outside of a bus ride on maybe until the College Cup. So this team has been remarkable.
Yeah. Yeah, and it wasn't even like the most recent game. So we know they beat North Carolina, and the only game they lost to was to South Carolina, who's the number 1 team right now. And even the LSU team, who they slashed in Baton Rouge last week, weren't they like 20th or 21st?
They had a 27 RPI. They had a 27 RPI going into that game, and they were receiving votes.
Yeah.
And not anymore because they got crushed.
Right, and then UCF went in there and crushed them. I think the most astounding fact that I found reading that, and again, if you only care about football and basketball at UCF, you don't really understand the consistent dominance and success of this women's soccer team. By the end of this season, as Eric wrote in this article, in the last 19 years, they will have 15 NCAA appearances. That is tremendous, and that's with a coaching change and new recruits. And it's just they keep rolling. And now we're looking. It's like not only the best team on campus, but perhaps the best UCF women's soccer team of all time. It's tremendous. It's great.
They've been tremendous, and they've got a shot to win a national title, and they got a shot to do a lot of great things. And the big thing, though, big takeaway, and I wrote about it too, the tradition. I mean, this team has been successful. It's the most, it makes the NCAA tournament the most of all the major sports on campus. And to me, we are a soccer school from that standpoint. And Coach Sahedek, that's significant because, they missed the NCAA tournament last year. She got to the NCAA tournament the first, few years that she arrived, but people said, well, she got that with Cromwell's players. Well, this is her team. Yep. And she's built a monster team here. They come back home this weekend, so I encourage people to come out and support that soccer team, which I think is very special. All right, Murph, we know you got to go. Tell the audience what they can expect from you this week on the Black and Gold Banneret and where they can find you.
Well, you can find on the Black and Gold Banneret. I'll tell you that much. blackandgoldbanneret.com. I'll be writing my preview for Navy at UCF. That'll be up tomorrow, and I believe I'm finally going to get around to writing my article this week about why this 2017 UCF football team is the best ever, even better than the 2013 Fiesta Bowl winner.
I wish we had time to break that down. Maybe we will. Maybe we'll convince Jeff to, have another kid and take more time off. I don't know. Time will tell on that. We kid, we care. We kid because we care. Murph, thanks a lot for all the help, and Bud, and we'll talk to you soon.
Elo and Victor, thank you so much.
All right. Brian Murphy joining us there, Vic. Women's soccer, again, people are going to, give me grievances. It's mostly by people that go to like 6 football games a year and they don't know anything about the other sports going on in UCF.
Well, of course.
They're tremendous. With Morgan Ferreira, the goal scorer, 11 scorer, they got balance.
They have everything. They have
really
scoring, they have defense, they have great goaltending, they have a deep bench, and they have a coach who knows what they can do and puts them in the best positions to maximize their potential. Look, man, I'm going to try and go out to one of these games towards the end of the season because it's actually going to be refreshing to see a soccer team in Orlando contend for a championship in the City Beautiful. And I get to see
the Pride did.
Well, yeah, I know, but they lost in the semifinal. But still.
That's right.
But still.
Well, you got a few more opportunities. They're home this weekend. Thursday night. They'll host Connecticut, the defending tournament champions. That's not going to be we'll see. I mean, Connecticut has given them problems in the past. Then they host Temple on Sunday. The one that you want to circle, Friday, October 27th. It's lurking. USF. That could be for the conference. USF's only 1 point back of UCF in the standings in women's soccer. Just like football, it's going to probably come down to that match. Now, Cincinnati this past weekend had a draw against Memphis, and what that means is UCF kind of controls its own destiny to win the conference outright. But even if they have to share the conference title with, say, Cincinnati or USF, if they draw with USF, let's say, or something like that, or whatever, with Cincinnati, they would have the tiebreaker, because the tiebreaker, if it's not head-to-head, because they tied with Cincinnati, UCF did earlier this year, would be goal differential, which UCF is a huge lead. They're like plus 20-something in goal differential. So those are the three games left at home for them. And after that, maybe they get to host the conference tournament. If they win the regular season title, they would host the conference tournament. And then after that,
who knows?
I think they'll definitely host the first round. And the way they're going, they'll probably host the second and third round, which is that Sweet 16 round. And then, as I mentioned, it depends on if they're a 1 seed, they get to host the quarterfinal game if they get that far.
Yeah.
If they're a 2 seed, they would have to go on the road in the quarterfinal. That's why that's the difference.
But a lot of soccer still to be played.
A lot to do, and they'll tell you that. And it starts with Connecticut. They got to beat. They got Connecticut, Temple, and USF to go there. Big win for men's soccer. They beat the defending conference tournament champions in Tulsa this past Sunday. Big win for them. They're in the mix to finish in the top 4 in the men's soccer standings. That's significant because the top 4 make the conference tournament. And they go to UConn this weekend. And, Vic, you and I actually just saw UConn men's soccer Friday night in a game that was on the American Digital Network. They played in Tampa. It was a showdown between the 2 undefeateds in the conference. And UConn took it to them, scoring 2 quick goals, and they beat USF 2-0. I know you and I, when we were talking in the car, were very impressed with UConn, and you were impressed with their goalie.
The goaltending for UConn, I think that's going to be the reason why UConn's going to – I think UConn's going to win the men's championship.
Still haven't given up a goal, by the way, in conference.
In spite of that tremendous scorpion kick by USF in the 86th minute, where they were trying to make a late rally. Look, the midfield for UConn is probably one of the best in the conference, and that and their goaltending, that's going to be the reason for them to get themselves in position to win the American Conference on the men's side of things. I really am intrigued, though, Eric. If UCF does get into that top 4, they may have to play UConn. This is really a chance for them to see where they stack up among the tops in the league.
It's a big one. You look at the standings right now in the conference. You have UConn at the top, USF and SMU, which is playing some good men's soccer. Temple and UCF fighting it out for that 4th spot. Obviously, a lot of soccer to go. I only bring that up because UCF will host Temple on the 28th, a game that is scheduled to be on the American Digital Network. So, but that's good for Scott Calabrese. His first year there, trying to build some momentum. They played well at home. If they can get to the conference tournament, anything can happen. And so that's what you're trying to do if you're the men's soccer team. Women's volleyball, mixed bag this past weekend at home. They swept UConn women's volleyball on Friday night, last Friday, 3-0, but then had a 2-set lead against Temple, Vic, but lost in 5 sets to Temple. I joked with somebody at the football game on Saturday about just prepare for a 5-setter because that's all these 2 teams know how to do, play 5-setters. I called one of their matches last year, UCF and Temple. It's the 3rd straight meeting that the match goes 5-set. This one's a harder pill to swallow, though, for UCF. Vic, you are the volleyball. For people that don't know, Vic's expertise is in volleyball. He calls locally Rollins Volleyball.
You used to call UCF volleyball when I was
there. You go. You were there, what, Meg Collado days?
Meg Collado, Piper Morgan, Jenny Frank, Hall of Famer Jenny Frank.
Who was at the alumni game weekend. The Connecticut match was like their big alumni deal. Mm-hmm. She was there. I noticed that. Tanya Jarvis. Jarvis. A coach at Bishop Moore.
Yes.
So you know your volleyball expertise is well known from that standpoint. Tough loss at home against a good Temple team, which is very good on the road. Yeah. But still, what's it like? It doesn't matter who you are. When you have a 2-set lead and lose, that's as hard as – it's probably the most gut-wrenching loss in volleyball. I would almost argue you'd rather lose in 3.
You rather get swept.
Right? Am I right on that?
And get dominated.
As weird as that sounds.
Yep. Because when you lose that 3rd set – that doubt really starts to creep in. And if you don't start strong in set 4 and it's a back and forth set and then they go ahead 1 or 2 points, that doubt starts to creep in your mind. You're like, oh no, here we go again. Then that snowball starts to roll. You lose set 4 and all of a sudden you got one set for the match and your opponent has all the momentum. Give credit to Temple. a tremendous performance. And to do it on the road. Everyone talks about coming back to, it's difficult. Doing it on the road in a hostile environment that the venue has become over the last few years underneath Coach Todd Dagenais, that's difficult to do in any setting. But for Temple to do it on the road against UCF, a big feather in that cap. And with the fact that there's no conference tournament for the American, it may be a big blow for UCF's chances to possibly get in that large bid.
No question. They're 10-10. They got to get some wins.
Yeah.
And they go on the road now. They go to Houston on Friday night, 8 o'clock Eastern. And then Sunday, 1 o'clock Eastern at Tulane. That's a match that will be shown on the American Digital Network from New Orleans. If there's a good news is if at least this happened on a Sunday. You didn't blow a 2-set lead on a Friday and then have to come back and play on a Sunday.
That's the worst.
You've got a chance to recover, but now they got to head on the road. And you look at their schedule. They got to go to Houston. You got to go to Tulane.
And then they go and they entertain the next
Volleyball, October 27th, Wichita State.
So let me get this straight. Hold on. So let me get this straight. Women's soccer is hosting USF.
That's right.
And UCF is going to be hosting a potentially top 25 ranked team in Wichita State.
Right. Pretty good night, huh?
Wow.
Sounds like there might be some Facebook Live or Periscope.
You have some options, fans.
Yeah.
One of them is not sitting on your tail.
You heard it there. Maybe that's a pretty good.
I would be out there, but I am otherwise engaged.
You got a pre-commitment. I understand. But look, the point is this. Big stretch here. At Houston, at Tulane. I think you got to build some. I almost feel like you got to win those two road matches.
Yes.
I know that's a lot to ask on the road at the conference. Get some 2 wins and get some confidence and get some momentum heading into that Wichita State where you're going to be swinging for the fences there to try to pull the upset and really make that marquee jump there. Because after Wichita State, they host Memphis. Then they go to Cincinnati, which has kind of recovered after losing Jordan Thompson for the year. And then the surprise team of the conference at East Carolina. So there's no gimmies here. But if they're going to make them run, I think this is a big
It has
weekend.
to be right now. It has to be right now.
So that's the story around all the sports going on in UCF. We've hit football. We've hit, of course, men's basketball. We mentioned in women's basketball had their conference media day. You could go to the American Digital Conference on YouTube for replays of that. We'll get into more basketball in future episodes. Well, Vic, this has been fun. I appreciate you filling in for Jeff. I know Jeff will appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
You guys go web. I mean, you and Jeff kind of did a lot of the volleyball back in the day. You two are the volleyball guys. Maybe you guys should Jeff, and then Matt Dunaway took over about 2000. You and Jeff should consider maybe going into like a volleyball podcast. I've heard about this softball podcast these two UCF alums do.
I heard that's doing pretty good for themselves.
What is it again? In the Circle?
In the Circle, yes.
Yeah. Might want to check that out for you softball.
Fast Pitch News, by the way.
Fall ball, UCF softball, by the way, have home matches not only this Friday, but also on the 27th if you needed another sporting event to go on.
Another sporting event that I can't understand because I am preoccupied.
Shame on you. But thanks again for filling in for Jeff. I know he appreciates that. Thanks to Brian Murphy for joining us on this episode. Keep it on Black and Gold Banneret on the website. You can see my articles as far as Murph's articles as well. Go on Twitter. I'm sure there'll be a blog up during the game on Saturday as UCF takes on Navy and for all the latest news in UCF. So for everybody, I'm Eric Lopez saying so long. We'll talk to you next time on the Black and Gold Banneret.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.